we're going to talk about environmental factors that can lead to high or low iron. And I've talked about a lot of these throughout the course of this lecture, but I'm just going to summarize it at this point in time. And the environmental factors, they are really what pulls the loaded trigger. So genetics load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So put a safety on the gun. And that's what we're going to talk about doing. So one of the most important environmental factors that influences iron absorption is if you're eating a diet that's rich in heme or non-heme iron. And if you look at this image on the right, it shows how much more absorbable the heme iron is. So heme iron is only found in meat and animal products, whereas non-heme iron is found in plants. Animal products have about 50% heme iron and 50% non-heme iron. And then animal products, it's just heme iron. And if you look at, and I know this is a genetic piece, but I wanted to help you understand. So if you look at the hemochromatosis gene and its effect on absorbing iron from meat, then it's exponentially higher than the absorption of iron from plants. Okay? So one way to decrease the iron absorption or increase the iron absorption is through diet. If you have high iron, eat more plants. If you have low iron, eat more meat. If you are trying to increase absorption of iron from plants, take vitamin C. Shellfish and red meat are going to be your highest heme iron containing foods. As you get older, your iron levels are going to go up because you're just not absorbing as much. You're going to be getting higher levels of iron because your liver makes less hepcidin with age and you have more time for iron to accumulate. Processed foods, because they're fortified in iron. Sugar intake, that'll increase iron absorption. Alcohol intake will increase iron absorption. Being low in vitamin B9 will increase iron absorption. Intense exercise will increase hepcidin and decrease iron absorption. Drinking tea or coffee, especially with a meal, will decrease iron absorption. One study found that coffee reduced absorption of iron from a hamburger by 39% as compared to 64% decrease with tea. So tea, especially green tea, is going to decrease iron absorption a lot. And if you consume the coffee or tea within an hour of a meal, then it's not a problem. So if the coffee or tea was consumed 1 hour before a meal, then it's not as big of a problem, just because it's not sitting there with the food in your stomach. If you consume it an hour after the meal while the food's already sitting in your stomach, then it's going to have a larger effect. So being a man's going to make you have higher iron usually. Men don't physiologically need more iron than women. If anything, women need more iron. But the lab ranges reflect that men have higher ranges because they are statistically have higher levels of iron that's put into their bell curve to create their ranges. Pregnancy, childbirth, definitely going to decrease iron. Birth control, that's lighter periods, no periods, you're going to get higher in iron. Estrogen decreases hepcidin, which is going to increase iron. And then placebo pills have iron in them. And birth control causes low B9, which makes you higher in iron also. Donating blood's going to lower iron. Surgeries are going to lower iron. Injuries, blood loss. GI infections are a huge cause of chronic low iron depletion. Supplementing with iron is going to make it higher. Multivitamin higher. Supplements that make iron lower: curcumin, cinnamon, green tea extract, alpha-lipoic acid, calcium, berberine, melatonin, quercetin, and IP6. We'll talk more about them in the next section. A high calcium diet is going to make you lower in iron. Blood transfusions can cause you to become high in iron. Drugs that bind to bile or having low bile will make you lower in iron. Cooking in cast iron can make you higher. Testosterone can make you much higher. Infections will deplete your iron. This is important. I haven't talked about this. Drinking water with elevated levels of iron. There's a lot of people that they live in a part of the country where they're drinking water high in iron, and those people need to get a whole house water filtration system and an RO system to get that iron out of the water. If they're high in iron, might be helping them if they're low in iron. And then the gastric bypasses are huge just because they bypass your duodenum, which is going to create all sorts of malabsorption issues. But yeah, any big digestive issue is going to make it harder for you to absorb iron. And then antibiotics, because you kill off all the bacteria, you're going to absorb more iron. And then low stomach acid's going to make it harder to absorb iron. So that could be from H. pylori or just stress or whatever. So I did want to include, this breaks down each part of the small intestine and large intestine and what is absorbed. So the first section is the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. Calcium, iron, magnesium, zinc, and copper are all absorbed there. And calcium and iron and magnesium and zinc and copper kind of all compete for absorption there. The second part of the small intestine, the jejunum, magnesium, zinc, sodium, potassium chloride are absorbed. The third part of the small intestine, the ileum, magnesium, bile salts, B12, calcium, and phosphorus are absorbed. And then the colon, or sodium, chloride, potassium, water. I just think that's really helpful for if you have somebody that has some GI issue. You can figure out what minerals to look for, what they might be low in. And then this pretty much summarizes a lot of what I've been talking about throughout this whole seminar. And I think this is one of the more important slides to come back to. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because I have talked about pretty much all of them in some capacity. But when you're dealing with some of these patients and you're trying to figure out what could be causing them to be high or low in iron, just go through this list and diff diet each thing and say, okay, do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? We need to fix this. And then that can probably help you figure out why they're high or low in iron if you're trying to fix that. And then this is the same idea. These are just lists, hepcidin, things that can increase or decrease hepcidin. And I pretty much talked about all of these things in this seminar so far. But if you're dealing with somebody that has high or low iron, then you want to figure out how to adjust their hepcidin as best as possible. So just look at this list. Some of these things you can control, some you can't. But it's still important to be aware of all of these things. So really with this section, I wanted to just give you lists to help you go through and diff-die, okay, what are the environmental factors? Because I've really talked about all of these throughout the course of this. And I just want you to have some quick lists to figure out what do I need to do to adjust and manage this person's chronic or high iron and figure out where to go from there. So this was a nice short section, and the lists are really the most important thing. The next section, we're going to go into some greater depth about the protocols to lower iron and manage healthy iron levels.